Lesson 8.2, percent of a number. When we want to find the percent of a number, we can use mathematical language to write an equation and then solve the equation. Let's look at a few examples. What is 28% of 250? Now, what, we can use a variable for that. Let's say x. What, or we could say what number, so x is some number, is, when you see the word is in math, that is mathematical language for the equals sign. So when you see is, write an equal sign. So what, or what number, is equals, x equals 28% of 250. Well, 28%, how would you write that as a decimal, in decimal form? Well, to go from percent to decimal, you would divide by 100, or you could say move the decimal 2 places to the left. So that would be 0.28. Anytime you put a percentage into an equation like this, you need to take the percentage to a decimal. X, or what, is 28% of. In math, of means multiplication. So we're going to multiply 28%, or 0.28, times, you can use a dot or you can use parentheses to show multiplication. So 28% of, or times, this number, which is 250. Okay, we could think of 250 as our whole, and we want 28% of that whole. And so the number we're going to get is going to be 28% of this number. It's going to be smaller than 250. And so I put this in my calculator, 0.28 times 250, and I would get 70. Right? So the number 70 would be 28% of 250. Next example says, what is 25% of 56? So what, or what number, let's use x for that. Some number is means equals, so x equals 25%. How would I write that as a decimal? I would divide by 100, or you could say move the decimal 2 places to the left. So that's 0.25. 0.25, or 25% of, that's multiply. I'm going to use parentheses to show multiplication. 25% of 56. That's what I'm multiplying 25% by. Okay, so because I have 25% of this, 56 is my whole, and I want 25% of it. So the number that I'm going to get is going to be smaller than, or 25% of 56. You put this into your calculator, you would get 14. So the number 14 is 25% of 56. Next example, what is 5% of 150? So what, or what number, that's going to be x, right? Some number, means equals. 5%, to write that as a decimal, I would divide by 100, or move the decimal 2 places to the left. That's 0.05. That's 5% in decimal form. Of means multiply. I'm multiplying by that whole number, 150. Okay, so if I want 5% of 150, that means my number is going to be way smaller than 150, right? It's only going to be a little bit of 150. Well, 0.05 times 150, you put that in your calculator, you get 7.5. 7 5/10 is 5% of 150. Next example, what is 125% of 48? Okay, so I say what, that's some number x. What number, x, means equals 125%. I could divide by 100, or move the decimal 2 places to the left. To put this in decimal form, that would be 1.25. So what, or some number, is 1.25, which is 125% in decimal form. 1.25 of means multiply by this number, the whole number, 48. Okay, now in the previous 3 examples, we've taken a percentage less than 100 of the whole number. In this case, we're taking a percentage greater than 100 of the number. And so when the percentage is greater than this number, when you multiply 1.25 times this number, we would expect that the number we get is bigger than 48 because we have more than a whole, more than 100%. And so 1.25 times 48, you put that in your calculator, you would get 60. And as you can see, this number 60 is bigger than 48 because 60 is 125% of that number. It's more than a whole. Last example here, what is 95% of 500? So for the word what, we use a variable. We'll use x. Means equals in math. 95%, to write that as a decimal, we divide by 100 or move the decimal 2 places to the left. That would be 0.95. Of means multiply, and we're multiplying by this number, 500. Okay, now 95%, that's almost 100%, right? And so if we take 95% of this number, we would expect that the number we get out is close to or is almost to 500. If you put this in your calculator, 0.95 times 500, you get 475, okay, which is 95% of this number. It's pretty close to 500.